Accordingly, I have directed the Secretary of the Treasury to take the action necessary to defend the dollar against the speculators.
What if I told you that the money in your wallet changed forever because of a single decision made over 50 years ago? On August 15th, 1971, President Richard Nixon appeared on television and announced a policy that most Americans barely understood. It lasted only a few minutes. There were no explosions, no protests, no military invasion. Yet economists still consider it one of the most important moments in modern financial history. That night, the world quietly entered a completely new economic era. Today, every dollar, euro, pound, and yen exists in a system that was born from that single announcement. It changed how governments borrow money, how inflation works, and even why housing, food, and everyday living have become more expensive over time. But to understand why Nixon made that decision, we have to travel back to the end of World War II. In 1944, while the war was still raging, representatives from 44 countries gathered in a small town called Bretton, New Hampshire. Their mission was simple but incredibly important. They wanted to create an economic system that would prevent another Great Depression and another global financial disaster. The agreement they created became known as the Bretton Woods system. Under this system, every major currency was linked to the U.S. dollar, and the U.S. dollar itself was backed by gold. Foreign governments could exchange $35 for 1 ounce of gold whenever they wanted. For the first time in history, the world had a financial anchor. The system worked surprisingly well. International trade expanded. Global economies recovered. Factories reopened. Millions of people escaped poverty. And because the dollar was backed by gold, countries trusted it. America became the financial center of the world. But success slowly created a new problem. As Europe and Japan rebuilt their economies, international trade exploded. More countries needed U.S. dollars to buy goods, invest, and settle international payments. To supply those dollars, the United States had to keep sending money abroad. Year after year, more dollars circulated outside America. At first, nobody worried. After all, the United States owned the largest gold reserves on Earth. But by the 1960s, something strange began happening. The number of dollars around the world was growing much. Trust is everything.
We see that in Vietnam. Why are we there? We are there first because a friendly nation has asked us for help.
During the 1960s, America spent enormous amounts of money on 2 major projects at the same time: the Vietnam War and President Lyndon Johnson's ambitious social programs known as the Great Society. Instead of raising taxes enough to cover these costs, the government borrowed more and created more dollars. Inflation slowly began rising. Foreign governments started asking an uncomfortable question. Was every dollar really backed by gold anymore? France became one of the loudest critics. President Charles de Gaulle openly argued that America enjoyed a unique privilege. The United States could simply print dollars, buy goods from the rest of the world, and everyone accepted the currency because it was tied to gold. If that promise failed, the entire system could collapse. Soon, several countries began exchanging their dollars for real American gold. Ships carrying gold bars quietly left U.S. vaults and crossed the Atlantic. America's gold reserves continued shrinking, The pressure became impossible to ignore. By 1971, the United States faced an impossible choice. Or break the promise that had supported the global financial system for nearly 3 decades. Richard Nixon chose the second option. On August 15, 1971, he suspended the convertibility of the U.S. dollar into gold. Temporarily, he said. But that temporary decision never ended. The gold window closed forever. For the first time in modern history, the world's most important currency no longer represented a fixed amount of gold. Instead, its value depended on something much more fragile: confidence. From that moment on, money became what economists call fiat currency. Its value no longer came from precious metals. It came from trust in governments, central banks, and the strength of national economies. The consequences were enormous. Central banks suddenly had far more flexibility. Governments could respond to recessions more aggressively, but they also gained the ability to create far more money than ever before. Supporters argue this flexibility prevented even worse financial crises. Critics argue it encouraged excessive debt, higher inflation, and repeated economic bubbles. More than 50 years later, the debate still hasn't ended. One thing, however, is impossible to deny. The announcement Nixon made in just a few minutes fundamentally changed the way modern money works. Every mortgage, every stock market rally, every inflation crisis, every government bailout, and every central bank decision exists in the financial world, created after 1971. The gold standard didn't simply disappear. It marked the beginning of the economic system we still live in today. And whether that decision saved the global economy or quietly created the financial problems of the modern world is a question historians and economists are still arguing about.